Hello and welcome to Advice in Action, the conference from the Advice in Southampton Partnership. This session is discussing hate incidents and hate crime and the advice and support that's available for victims. We have a number of local expert speakers today. Sam Waddington, Network Coordinator for the Southampton Hate Crime Network, Andy Maritos, Chief Executive Officer at Chrysalis, Dr. Abdullah, Community Cohesion Officer for Southampton City Council and Chair of the United Voices of African Associations, Dr. Parvin Darmani, Chair of the Muslim Council of Southampton, Ian Loynes, Chief Executive at Spectrum Centre for Independent Living, Alex Boxall, Neighbourhood Sergeant Southampton East with Hampshire Police, and finally myself, Sarah Brightwell, Project Coordinator for the Advice in Southampton Partnership. Today, you'll gain an overview of the Southampton Hate Crime Network and the work being done to encourage reporting and support victims. You'll hear views from local experts on 4 of the 5 strands of hate incidents and hate crime: gender identity, race, religion, and disability. And you'll learn what hate crime looks like for each of those groups and the specific barriers people may face when reporting. You'll gain an overview of the support available locally, including the advice and support that's available for related issues. And finally, you'll hear what you can expect from the police when you report a hate incident or hate crime. I'm pleased to introduce firstly Andy Maritos, Chief Executive Officer at Chrysalis, who's going to discuss hate incidents related to gender identity.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, I'm Andy from Chrysalis. We're the South leading charity supporting trans, non-binary and questioning people and their family and friends. We're a mental wellbeing charity working with people who have throughout their lives experienced the denial, discrimination and hate that's the reality for trans people in the UK. We empower our members to understand themselves better and to make healthy decisions. Being trans is an aspect of human diversity. Simply put, one's gender identity does not match with the one assigned at birth. Being trans does not mean one will have poor mental health. However, the explicit and implicit transphobic abuse meted out to trans, non-binary and questioning people and their families and friends by society, family, statutory bodies, employers, service providers, all too frequently results in trauma and poor mental health. Our own statistics show that over 35% of trans people who have accessed our support this year have made at least one serious attempt to take their own life. Trans people top every single metric predicated by poor mental health, homelessness, eating disorders, substance misuse, anxiety, depression and self-harm. Yet trans people do not come forward for support. They're not accessing your services. Why? Because trans people are sick and tired of explaining themselves. They're fed up with their gender identity being the focus of whatever support they're asking for, even when it's not relevant. They're tired of sticking out. They're scared. They expect misgendering, abuse, poor or no treatment, and casual transphobia. For trans people, their choice is often to be invisible, to resign oneself to constant misgendering and a life lived as a lie, or to go stealth, to take hours in the morning checking your presentation to make sure that you pass, to conceal an aspect of yourself from everyone around you. A volunteer told us, I had to quit the first job I found after a week of working early mornings, just me and 2 older men. The transphobic stuff that came out of their mouths wasn't directed at me at all. It made me not want to work in isolation with them any longer. Being invisible can mean giving up on finding a relationship, because if you explain who you are, you risk your partner turning abusive. Perhaps this is the time that you'll be found dead in a hotel room. Risk being a statistic, one of the 350 trans people who were murdered last year worldwide. Or you can choose to be hypervisible, to be out, to be seen, to be understood as transgender. You put yourself, by virtue of simply attempting to exist in wider society, in a place of constant vulnerability. Reported transphobic hate crimes rose by 350% from 2015 to 2020. And we at Chrysalis know that the unreported crimes rose even more. Freak, pervert, hitting you is not like hitting a woman. Fight like the man you are. Such commonly heard insults that our members don't feel like sharing them outside of the safe places within our groups. People stare, people take their children across the street to avoid you. Imagine being verbally abused in the street and having nowhere safe to turn. We teach our children that if somebody threatens them or scares them in the street, to go to a populated, lighted place. Go into a shop, they'll help you. But if you're trans, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Literally anyone could hurt you, man or woman. Ruan was smoking a cigarette one night earlier this year in Bournemouth. He's experienced transphobic abuse in Portugal and in the UK. And in this instant, he was gagged, he was punched, kicked and slashed with a knife to his face. He was lucky to escape without being raped. That was earlier on this year. So what can you do about it? You can get some training, review your policies and procedures to make sure you're not inadvertently contributing to the problem. Make sure that in listening to someone, in taking a record, you're respecting their name, their pronouns, their experience. Do not victim blame or shame. Being trans is an aspect of human diversity. Perpetuating a hate crime is a choice. Call out bad behaviour. Take a lesson from the door staff at the Hobbit and their sister venues, the Shooting Star and the Black Phoenix. They have a zero tolerance to all bad behaviour, and therefore their venues are safe spaces. So when I was asked to put this video together, you wanted examples, personal ones, and more broadly from the people we support. This is one of mine. Out on a night out, dressed kind of fairly casually, and I was dancing, and somebody came right up to my face, right on the dance floor. Are you one of those boy or girl things? And I was like, well, actually, I just thought I was a person out having a drink and some good time with friends. So I was like, well, I suppose so. And they're like, you're disgusting. So, okay. So I was like, quite shaken, went up to the door staff. I said, look, this has just happened. I'm like, okay. They observed the person, because bad behaviour in one way usually shows up in other ways as well. And then they escorted them off the premises. And later on that evening, they came back and they checked with me. Was I still okay? Had it ruined my night? Was I going to be all right leaving the venue, going home? Did I feel safe? And yeah, I did. I felt really safe, really supported. So can you make your site a visibly safe space all year round? Don't just fly your rainbow flag during Pride Month, but do nothing about your front of house staff. Look for implicit transphobic behaviours and call them out. The he, she, it comment, the laughter at someone's appearance because it's outside of the norm. Normalise being trans and treat every trans person with respect. And on this slide, there's some examples of just words from our members. So easy to get it right, and it makes such a massive difference. So how do Chrysalis support victims of hate crime? We have a member of staff trained to support victims. We ask all new contacts as assessment and consultation if they've been a victim of hate crime, because quite frankly, virtually every person who comes to our service has been a victim of hate crime. And if so, would they like our support in reporting the incident? We've also have an email, report.hate@chrysalisgim.org.uk, which anyone can use to get our support. They don't need to be a member or interested in using any of our other services. We have close links with the local LGBT+ liaisons within the police forces, where we have our face-to-face support groups, and a fantastic working relationship with Hampshire Constabulary Laglows, with their co-chair, Scott Johnson, sitting on our board of trustees. The Laglows regularly visit the groups and get to know the members, breaking down some of the barriers around the reporting of hate crime. We also bring issues like Ruan's to the attention of senior police in the area, holding them to our account and offering our support to the victims. How else do we repair the damage of hate, hurt and transphobia? I said we're a mental wellbeing charity, and our support groups and one-to-one counselling provide our members with safe spaces to heal from trauma. When they come to us, 70% of our new members disclose living with anxiety and depression, fearing to go outside or to connect with people as their authentic selves. When they've been with us for 6 months to a year, they describe their sense of gender euphoria, of our support empowering to finally be free to be me. They make healthy decisions and go on to live their best lives, understanding and embracing their authentic selves. Thank you for listening. If you want to find out more about our services or connect with us for any reason, you can check out our website at www.chrysalisgim.org.uk. Follow us on social media at ChrysalisGIM. Call us on 03448 468 545 or email info@or report.hate@chrysalisgim.org.uk. I'm now going to pass you over to Abdullah from Tuva, who's going to talk about racially motivated hate crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Abdullah Sana, Community Cohesion Officer at Southampton City Council and also Chair of the United Voices of African Associations.
My name is Abdullah Sane. I am the chair of the United Voice of African Association, an umbrella organization for Africans living in the city. And I'm also an employee of Southampton City Council. I am their Community Cohesion and Diversity Officer. My topic today is race hate crime or racism. So I'll be talking to you about race hate crime in celebration of Hate Crime Week. So we start with understanding of hate crime, race hate crime. A race hate incident occurs when the victim or anyone else thinks hostility or prejudice was carried out or motivated by one's race. This means that if you believe something is a hate incident, it is a hate incident and it should be recorded as one. Anyone can be a victim, including people who may be wrongly believed to be part of a certain racial group. You may be targeted because your partner or your children belong to a certain racial group. A racial group means a group of people who are defined by reference to their race, color, nationality, or ethnic origin, or national origin. This includes Blacks, Africans, Gypsies, travelers, refugees, asylum seekers, Chinese, and Eastern Europeans. So here I have videos of people, local people in Southampton, that try to explain to us what they mean, what they understand about racism and how it affects them and what could be done if you have experienced racism. So you can listen to the video.
Racism is still happening, and I was victim of a racial attack yesterday when dropping my daughter to the train station. She was going back to university, and I'm a mother of 3 children, 21, 18, and 5. We were hugging each other to say goodbye, and there was these 2 adults, white adults, that came close to us, and they were making monkey noises, and they found that very funny. And I just asked my children to ignore them because we were in a very emotional state, saying goodbyes to one of our loved ones. So I would say, yeah, racism is very, very still happening. And you're having a conversation with someone that excuse themselves of not being racial, but then have a racial comment that is still very, very happening. And about what happened a few months ago when England was playing the European finals, I couldn't sleep that night. My two daughters were working, and they had comments and looks. They feel very attacked, and by the time they reached home, uh, they were on social medias and they were having these horrible comments, looking at the horrible comments that were being said about the players, and they even come across a challenge that someone posted on social media about killing someone black, raping a black girl, randomly attacking a black person on the street. Those are challenges that I find very disturbing. And as a mother, the next day I couldn't even allow my children to go out of the house because I was scared we might be attacked because we are black. It means associating my color, the color of my skin, to an animal, or to a certain noise, or maybe to a type of food, because it's known that people from my race love eating fried chicken. So to me, that's racism.
Good. Yeah, you want to go?
No, I don't know yet.
Yeah, okay,
what
okay,
to
okay.
say.
You want to say? What does it mean to you personally?
Yeah, well, personally, what I know in terms of legislation anyway, it's like any incident where you feel racially abused is when remarks have been made, any derogatory remarks in terms of your color, ethnic color, nationality, or even your faith, and to make you feel inferior and to put fear in you of the person. And to me, that is definitely racism.
That's good. That's good. And you? You want to say something?
For me, racism is that if you want to become in power of someone and show somebody very down and show that you're in power and you're ruling somebody, that's racism.
To the perpetrators of racism, if you are racist, if you make comments towards another person, it will be reported. We are encouraging victims to come forward and report it. As any racism, it could amount to an offense, and it amounts to hate crime.
For me, when people think racism, I think it is lack of knowledge and lack of respect. So they doesn't get enough knowledge to know that how much it affects on their own life once they realize what they have done. That is.
Yes, I think racism is happening in Southampton here, to be honest. 3 days ago, I experienced one myself. I'm not saying everybody's racist because there's a lot of good people, there's a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. But this is the first time I've experienced this kind of racism. Two gentlemen came to me and they just said to me, boy monkey, you know, that I was going with my niece, and she was shocked, jumped and looked at me and said, "Did you hear this?" I said, "Yes, of course." I said, "What are you going to do about it?" I said, "No, just calm down, because I knew I couldn't do anything at that point in time. I just didn't want to create problem. It's going to be a very dangerous thing to do at that point in time. So the only thing that I could do is to report it, and that's what I did. And I told her that she needs to calm down, and this is a rare occasion for me. But even with that, it's not acceptable. But I know I will be able to cope with it at that point in time. So, but racism is happening everywhere. It's happening. I could just imagine if that was the niece that it was happened to, the impact would be really, really damaging for her. So yes, so it's our responsibility, everybody's responsibility, to kick racism out. Okay, for victim support, those who suffer from racism, there are supports for you all around. We said you need to report it. That's really, really crucial, really important. but also you need to report it to 101. 101 is the number, the general number, unless if you find yourself in a situation that's really serious violence involved, then you can call 999. But also, if you have got a smartphone, then you can download Do Not Hate, how do you call it? Love Do Not Hate app. That's really important. There are supports out there. Victim support is one of the agencies that really support those who have hate crime, racism, other hate crime. So if you experience any of that, please, get in touch with them for support. When you Google victim support, you will always find their number there. It's called VS or victim support. The police has it, other hate crime groups, third-party reporting centers have it. So look for victim support. Thank you. In addition to their experiences, there are also institutional racism that some people experience. That's about perceptions that people from minority backgrounds have to work harder in society in order to get the same results as white people. Or when investigation had not been handled with the same care that a case involving a white person would have been. An example of that is Stephen Lawrence's case. Tuva, the United Voice of African Association, has done some work to create awareness about racism, and is also a third-party reporting center for hate crime. We operate at Roebuck Center, 53 Derby Road. Tuva encourage reporting and also encourage victims to seek support. Tuva encourage people to speak to the authorities in their schools, at their workplaces, or places of worship, to speak to people in authority if they have experienced any racism. In the community, we also encourage people to speak to someone they trust and not to put themselves in danger. Tuva organized talks after the England football event and supported victims, because a number of people have reported experiencing hate crime during that week, racism during that week. Tuva also stood in solidarity with the Chinese university lecturer who was assaulted in 2021. We organized Hate Crime Witness Week with artworks, with the t-shirt printings, poetry about hate crime, etc. Tuva is launching a book on the 8th of October. It is about Black people living in Southampton for 500 years. The reason why this is important in terms of racism and hate crime is it helps us to find identity. It promotes our identity, and also we find pride in it, to know that there were Black people in the city who have contributed immensely to this city. We can identify ourselves with those people, and that's really useful for us and for young people. Tuva has contributed, for the last 4 years, Tuva has been organizing English classes to help those who are less able to speak English and influence integration. We are currently working in partnership with the council as well to do some posters promoting Hate Crime Witness, Hate Crime Awareness Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Parvin Darmani, Chair of the Muslim Council of Southampton, regarding hate crime related to religion.
I'm Parvin Darmani, and I chair the Muslim Council, and I'll just tell you a little bit about the Muslim Council. We were established in the year 2000 as an umbrella organization to represent Muslim organizations and mosques across the city of Southampton. We are also affiliated as an organization to the Muslim Council of Britain. The Muslim Council Southampton is an independent, not sectarian body, and it works to promote cooperation, consensus, and unity on Muslim affairs. And we also work towards more enlightenment and enlightened appreciation of Muslims and the religion of Islam. What Muslim Council also does is to foster better community relations and to work for the good of the whole of the society in Southampton and beyond. So what do? We are engaged in religious education in schools through the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education, and also school class presentations. And we have many schools who visit our mosques and talk to the imams and benefit by that. So we have a consistent program around that. We support all the community and voluntary organizations who are not only our members, but other organizations who need and seek advice and support from us on any issues relating to Islam or their clients who are Muslims and they don't understand them. We also organize local food relief. There is a local food bank we have called Food for All, and we have and it's not just for Muslims, it's for everybody, although the primary donations all come, whether they're cash or food, come from the Muslim community. But all communities are delivered food, or they collect the food from that. We have supported the first and only Muslim primary school in Southampton called Chrysalis. And it does a lot of activity. Although it's a Muslim primary school, it also looks at things beyond Islam. The MCS organizes social education and well-being, sports and fitness activities, both for adults, youth, and women and children, young children. We advise and we provide counseling and information, and that we find is really important in terms of people who are refugees or Muslims and do not know where to seek advice and counseling or information. And if we look at the current Afghani community coming in, we're working importantly trying to organize information sessions for them so they understand we're part of the wider city group. We do interfaith activities and build bridges, have strategic partnerships with agencies and business, and we are represented on different interfaith and multi-agency partnerships, including the Hate Crime Network, which is a very important space for people where they can report without fear. And for that, I thank Ahmed for initiating it and Ian for hosting and managing. So what are the key issues for Muslims? The interesting thing is Muslims are not a race, and often Islamophobia manifests itself as a racist hate incident or crime. So they are very closely connected in some sense, but there is always a confusion, I think, in when they are reporting, that the person who takes the report often, puts it down as a racist hate crime rather than, despite the community saying that it's an Islamophobic crime. Muslim Council has a relationship with Tel Mama, which is the national organization, and there's a lot of work on hate crime, and we're closely connected with them. So where does the hate crime occur? And what are the key issues? So it occurs on the roads. People are not aware of difference between South Asians and those people and women wearing hijabs, or men in kurtas and a shalwar, which is very traditional dress for Asians, Indians and Pakistanis. So we have this issue where, when the 9/11 attacks took place, and 9/11, after 9/11, this has been a very significant issue around religious hate crime, where even the Sikh taxi drivers, because they were a turban, they were getting an increasing number of attacks, and it becomes very confusing. So the layperson in the white community would not know who is a Muslim or who is not a Muslim unless you're very evidently wearing a hijab, and for women a hijab, or a man in a cap, an Islamic cap. We get religious and racist taunts to families, individuals, and even children on the streets, being called Taliban. Even today, after so many years of 9/11, Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, go home, we've had enough of you. And this doesn't only happen on the street, it happens in schools, colleges, universities, and even in some statutory services. And of course, so it is very much ingrained into the society thing. We also get anti-Muslim and misogynistic comments. There's a lot of graffiti, cyber stuff, online abuse, arson, hoax calls, discrimination, and discrimination not only in terms of being a Muslim and on the street or a place like that, but very insidiously in organizations and statutory organizations where people are, because of their faith, are not progressed in any way. There is a focus on them all the time. They are harassed. There are negative comments, but progression is difficult for them, as well as any kind of recourse to any issues around tackling that within the organizations. You don't have to be violent, physically violent, to know that it's hate crimes. You don't need bruises and all that. But Muslims are terrorized via the presence of somebody who is obviously their body language, the comments they might make, and damage to the property. There are many letterbox abuses we get, poo through the letterboxes, rubbish, firecrackers sometimes, and often people don't report from these communities. Children at school who are bullied, name calling, sometimes even bashed, but families will often not, because there is little confidence in the organizations who deal with these things. Neighborhood and neighbors, constant, consistent, and I find sometimes local authority investigations and police investigations where there is no action, and the person who's reporting does not really understand why there is no action. It is maybe that the police could not do anything, or local authority could not do anything. So what happens is people actually say, well, nothing happened. I told them, they didn't tell me anything back, so I don't know. And there is no point in actually complaining at all. This in turn creates fear, alarm, distress, panic, and of course, a lot of mental health problems and loneliness and isolation. So our politicians also, and you will be well aware that the politicians make a lot of comments. The very significant one is in 2018 by Boris Johnson, commented on veiled Muslim women as letterboxes and bank robbers. And so the attacks on Muslims spiked from 8 incidents in the previous year to 38 incidents during that week of that. So, you know, it is the tone that is set also by people in positions of power, both within institutions and in society. I feel that myself that there is much confusion between race and religious hate offense recording. And issues for us are about underreporting. The community feels that it is a normal part of living in the West, that you are to accept this, and the levels of confidence in police, as I've said, and in agency. Increasingly, we find that there is no feedback to the communities as to the how the organizations operate and why there has been no action. The effects of hate crime on Muslims is the feelings of vulnerability. These are not just to Muslims, but anybody who suffers hate crime is anger, hurt, anxiety, panic, shame to disclose. And people then isolate themselves. And what is really interesting is how communities change their behaviors, and there is an avoidance of going into certain places and certain areas. And we have often said to people who've had hate crime or whatever in certain instances that there is safety in numbers. So if you go out after dark, or if you're going at any time in areas where you previously had problems, you go with somebody, so you're not alone. But what this creates is also communities of silence, because if you look at the media every day, nearly every day, there is something around the Muslims, and then this whole anti-Muslim campaigns that go on, that the high levels of right-wing activity, which is targeted specifically at Muslims. So what do Muslims do? They keep their heads down. Even when there are football matches from the inner city and people are passing to go to the stadium, Muslim women have been abused, spat on, and even alcohol poured on them. And they have chosen to keep quiet because of lack of confidence in reporting. So what they do is they stand indoors. Everybody stays indoors while the football match is on. And when the football match finishes, when people are coming out. So knowledge gaps, I think. There are a lot of knowledge gaps. I don't think we always understand in depth why there is hate crime is committed, religious, race. Is it just xenophobia? And often people who are threatened don't understand or who don't understand or perceive what threat actually means, whether it's religious or race, because they're connected to some degree. And why do people who feel animosity against Muslims and are very anti-Muslims and yet do not commit hate crime? We have no understanding of that at all. So why somebody hates the Muslims and yet will not commit hate crime? What are the key issues there? We need to think about that. We don't understand the role of the cyberspaces around that, and I don't think we understand the role of restorative justice for Muslims in terms of hate crime and how that can be dealt with as part of not education, but as restoration of one's own soul and being. So I've said quite a lot. I'm thankful that we have a hate crime network in the city, and that we are able to connect with each other and know where our key areas of support can be, but also what are the areas where we can work together on that affect us. So for example, mental health affects everybody, so we can work together on issues of that. So I'm very grateful for that, and I'm grateful for Ian for hosting and managing the Hate Crime Network. There's a lot of work to be done in schools, colleges, universities, and with the service around this issue around religious hate crime. And I haven't spoken about the Jewish people, which is not only a racial group, but also religious group. And they have, I know the graves had been desecrated in the past years, and they also are targets for anti-hate, anti-religious hate, religious hate crime in terms of Judaism. The one other confusion is that people generally see Sikhs as Muslims, but they are in their own right a group that is part of the race element and not really not Muslims. That's all I have to say. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and it is everybody's issues to have good, stable communities wherever you are. And in Southampton, we are very lucky. We work very well together. We live very well together. Yet there are these issues that are insidious and keep coming up, and reporting is a big issue for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Parvin. Next, speaking about hate crime related to disability, we have Ian Loynes, Chief Executive at the Spectrum Centre for Independent Living.
Okay, so thank you very much for introducing me. I'm Ian Loynes. I'm here to talk about disabled people and hate crime today. Just a little bit about disabled people first. Disabled people are 5 times more likely to be employed, and there are estimated to be 13 million disabled people in the UK, which is 15% of the population, and that's a huge potential opportunity for making a difference to the social cohesion of any discussion group, including hate crime. Disabled people are just as likely to experience hate crime as anybody else, and I think certainly my experience are that there won't be a single disabled person that hasn't experienced hate crime, often very regularly. The value of this purple pound, which disabled people to the UK economy is reckoned to be £212 billion a year, often more than that if you include families of disabled people who will often be disaffected just as much as a disabled person. Disabled people are often viewed as second class when it comes to receiving services. Last year's pandemic was a case in point. Disabled people were denied treatment because of their impairments, were seen as less valuable than the rest of the population for treatment, and often had do not resuscitate orders placed on them against their knowledge and wishes in many cases. And so even in statutory healthcare, they're often viewed as second-class citizens. By disabled people, we include people who have psychological, sensory, intellectual, physical, emotional, or age-related impairments, and we also recognise people who have hidden impairments. We therefore include in our definition of disabled people, people living with long-term health conditions, people with learning difficulties, people going through the mental health system or cancer system, and those living with HIV and AIDS, as well as older people. And we find that general experiences of disabled people are both similar and different. You can't characterise somebody with the same impairment as another person as having the same needs. I will have this very different needs to somebody with identical impairment to me. But similarly, my needs do have some commonality with other people. Certainly disabled people in general will be experiencing discrimination on the basis of their different impairments. We support a spectrum of disabled people to live independently, and just a little bit about that. What we hear from disabled people, that there's a wide range of different aspects. There's 12 basic aspects to life which enables everybody, including disabled people, to live independently. And I won't go through that list now, but it's just often, I think, disabled people are characterised as needing and having social care. But that is but one of the things that we need to get right if disabled people are going to have choice and control over what they choose to do with their lives. Disability hate crime, like any other hate crime, is a criminal offence which targets somebody or who is or is perceived to have to be a disabled person. These offences can be targeted at disabled people with any impairment and cover a range of behaviours, including assault, verbal abuse, harassment, theft, in some cases burglary, hate mail, criminal damage. And no matter what the offence is, any disabled person, any disability hate crime can have a serious impact on the individual and their families, and sometimes the community in general. A number of these offences have seen perpetrators receive prison sentences, and hate crime can also regularly appear on social networking sites in the form of cyberbullying or offensive messaging. And disabled people are just as susceptible to those forms of hate crime as anybody else. And all of those offences can have a serious impact on the individual, their family, their community, as I said. Just two examples of disability hate crime from the work that we've done to support people affected by hate crime. So a person with learning difficulty was subjected to hate crime in the form of harassment and offensive remarks by some of the person's neighbours. Being angered by these actions, the individual decided to film those that were being targeted by, providing evidence of that behaviour to the police. As a result of coming to us, the victim was provided support by Spectrum and enabled to understand what was and was not acceptable, what they should and should not have to put up with, and shown the best ways is to react and encouraged to report offences to the police, because often hate crime offences are multiple offences that over time build up to be a very serious impact that might individually not be taken seriously. After going to the police, in this case, a perpetrator was spoke to by the police, and as a result, those incidents stopped. Another example of disability hate crime we've supported, while shopping, a wheelchair user was subjected to verbal abuse by somebody who assumed that they would be a benefits scrounger. She actually held down a job at the time and was ultimately pushed and injured. Support was offered to her to accept that it wasn't her fault, that it was not acceptable even as a form of hate crime in verbal abuse, let alone physical assault. After she did report it to the police, the officer visited her, took full statement, and CCTV records were reviewed, and some of the people identified and subsequently spoken to. The victim in case was affected and took a while to feel comfortable about going outside on their own again. So it goes to show that it affects people's confidence as well as the actual assault at that moment. It can affect people's confidence going forward as well. That was just a very small snippet around hate crime, disabled people. If you'd like any more information, then please contact us as follows via our email address info@spectrumcil.co.uk, by telephone number 023 8033 0982, or by visiting us or posting postal services to us at Unit 12. 1919 Rose Road in Southampton, SO146TE. And that's it, thank you.
We're now going to explore some of the issues that can be related to hate crime and the support available for those. My name is Sarah Brightwell. I'm the project coordinator for the Advice in Southampton Partnership, working for Citizens Advice Southampton, which is the lead organisation in the partnership. Hate crime and hate incidents sometimes present alongside related issues. We see this particularly with housing problems, employment issues, and sometimes education. Advice and Southampton services all have fully trained advisors who can support with these issues. First of all, of course, if someone came to us and had been the victim of a hate crime, the majority of our services are third-party hate crime reporting centres. So we can support someone to make the hate crime report, whether or not they want to have contact with the police. And we could advise on what the process should be after they've made that report and what should happen next. Obviously, we hope that any report will be dealt with appropriately, but in the instance that it is not, we can support people to take it further and to make a complaint if necessary. Thinking about housing now, the first thing we would always do with any housing issue is to establish the client's housing status, and we'd advise them on their rights and responsibilities in relation to that housing status. So, for example, an excluded occupier has very few rights compared to a tenant. Someone who is a private tenant might be at risk of Section 21 eviction if they try and make a complaint to or about their landlord. We'd also explore with the client what it is they actually want from the advice and information that they're seeking. Sometimes it might be that someone just wants the behaviour to stop. Sometimes it might be that they need to move home. So we're always looking to act in the client's best interests. Neighbourhood issues are common with hate crime. It might be that someone has been verbally abused by their neighbours. They may experience graffiti, damage to property, or in more serious cases, actual physical assault. We can help people to report to the police, to landlords, whether that's public or private landlords, to the local council where that's appropriate. And that includes advising on the legal proceedings that are possible either for the individual or for the local council and other services. We can also advise people on the option of mediation, which is often a good first step when there are neighbour issues, and signpost to local mediation services. Sometimes it happens that when a hate crime is reported, it's actually treated as antisocial behaviour instead. And there are implications then for how the case is actually dealt with and handled. So we can advise on the differences, and we can support someone to request a change in status with the police so that the case is dealt with as a hate crime, not antisocial behaviour, where this is going to be helpful. Of course, ideally, the victim of a hate crime should not have to move home. But sometimes people simply don't feel safe where they live anymore, and they really need to move. In those cases, we can help people to apply for rehousing. For example, applying to the council housing list, making sure that they've got all the relevant points for that list. If someone wants to look for a private tenancy, we can help by supporting them to apply for the rent deposit scheme in the city, which will then help them with the cost of the initial deposit in private rented housing. In council or housing association housing, there is sometimes the option of applying for a management move. This is an exceptional circumstances move that the landlord will arrange for someone if they're really not safe where they are. And we can support someone to apply for that and to appeal decisions and so on. And finally, we can help people to make an application under the Homelessness Act. So that includes making the actual application with them or on their behalf, and support to appeal any decision that hasn't gone in the client's favour. And we have very strong links with the council's homelessness team, and we can refer directly into that service. Something we've been seeing more of since the beginning of the first lockdown is harassment from landlords and illegal eviction from landlords, generally private landlords in these instances. Again, in these cases, we would initially advise the clients on their rights and establish what it is that they want. We can support them to negotiate with the landlord, either by phone or in writing. And sometimes it's the case that the tenant doesn't actually have their landlord's details. Now, they do actually have a legal right to hold those details. So if they don't have them, we can advise them on how to find out the landlord's contact details. We can then support the resident to complain to the landlord if needs be, and that might be about their treatment, it might be about repairs being done and so on. And if needs be, we can also advise them and support them to escalate the case to the council. In the case of illegal eviction, if illegal eviction was threatened, we'd initially help the person to write to their landlord explaining that the threatened action is in fact illegal. We can advise on the court processes that are available to the client and to the landlord. And if necessary, we can make a homelessness application on their behalf, and again, following that through with the council. One thing to note in the case of harassment or illegal eviction is that if the action is imminent or there's any threat of physical violence or anything like that, then the person should call the police on 999 if necessary in the first instance. In employment, hate incidents can be perpetrated by various different groups. So it may be that someone's received derogatory comments and verbal abuse from a colleague. There may be abuse from customers, subcontractors, any group that has perpetrated a hate incident or a hate crime whilst that person is engaged in that employment. And the employer, no matter which group has perpetrated the crime, has certain responsibilities to deal with that hate incident or hate crime appropriately. Similar to housing issues, the first thing we always do is establish the employment status of our client. And then we advise them on their rights and responsibilities, which can be quite different depending on whether they're an employee, a worker, or a subcontractor or self-employed. We explore with the client whether the hate incident or hate crime would also constitute discrimination under employment law. And we can then support the person to contact and negotiate with their employer. So that might be initially an informal negotiation. We can support them and advise them on grievance processes. And if the worst comes to the worst, we can actually support people right the way through to employment tribunal. We have access to specialist tribunal support. In education, hate incidents and hate crimes can often take the form of bullying. And thinking about education, we're thinking about schools, colleges and universities, any educational setting. Again, we'd initially advise the person, or it might sometimes be their parents, their family, on their rights in that scenario. We can help them to report the problem to the school or college and to negotiate with the educational establishment, again, taking into account what it is that the person wants as an outcome. If that doesn't work, we can support people to make formal complaints, either to the education establishment itself or to the local authority where appropriate. And we also have a number of specialist organisations that we can signpost to. I'm now pleased to introduce Sam Waddington, the Network Coordinator for the Southampton Hate Crime Network.
Okay, thank you for the introduction there, Sarah. So, yeah, I'm Sam Waddington, the Southampton Hate Crime Network Coordinator and Facilitator. Do that at Spectrum Centre for Independent Living. So today I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction into what our hate crime network is and what we do to support victims or those who've been affected by hate crimes and incidences. So first of all, what is the Southampton Hate Crime Network? So basically we're initiative, community-led initiative that's been set up since 2017, around the time of Brexit, when we saw a spike in kind of incidences around kind of hate crime. So yeah, basically we felt there was a need for there to be some system that was set up by the community, almost to help the community in Southampton that were experiencing hate crime. So yeah, through the links the community groups had with Southampton Police, we could have, decided that there was a need for places people could go to report hate crime without necessarily going directly to the police. Some found is that people don't end up reporting hate crime because, as we touched on before, that there is a fear of sometimes what the police will do to deal, or other agencies to deal with instances that won't be dealt with seriously, or they'll lose their anonymity. So there are issues people have with reporting, and we set up this network basically to make it easier for people to report any incident of hate crime, no matter how small it is deemed. So, anything from just name calling, or to a physical assault that's much more serious. anything that is motivated by hate should be reported, and that's what we encourage. So yeah, all the organisations that are connected to the network are community based, so they support the types of people who are affected by hate crime on a regular daily basis. So whether that be disabled people, people of a certain gender identity, race, religion, sexual orientation, there are third-party hate crime reporting centres connected to our network that people can report those types of incidences to, and they'll obviously give they have the expertise and experience to not necessarily help them report hate crime, sometimes just to listen to them, which is what people need when they've experienced something quite shocking like a hate crime or incidences. And although we're community based, and most of our members of community based organisations, and also do have the statutory support from the police and the council, because obviously they have some information resources that that we can benefit from to improve our network. And so it's important to have those good connections, really. And our numbers are increasing in terms of reporting centres. We're trying to be more diverse in terms of what, whether it's different people of different different types of religious groups, or different types of groups for disabled people. So but at the moment we have over 20, which we're quite pleased with. And we realise that there's a lot more organisations in Southampton that could be benefit our network. So we're constantly trying to sort of develop what we do. Okay, so that's about Southampton. That's about what we are. So how do we function as a group? So we have 4 meetings a year to basically give all our members an opportunity to come together. These are done virtually at the moment. Obviously, we were doing them face to face before the pandemic, and we're hopefully to get back to that at some point. But essentially we hold these meetings so that all the different groups who are doing work to tackle hate crime and raise awareness of it for their own groups throughout throughout the year and in different ways. It's important to give them basically an opportunity for those members to come together and talk about what they've been doing in the last few months to tackle hate crime. We share those ideas, and obviously that information can help people, help the different groups consider how they could tackle hate crime. And I think that's been beneficial to a lot of groups who have commented about that. And it's also for related issues, around like domestic abuse and that kind of thing, which is obviously has related to hate crime. We discuss those kind of issues as well in these meetings, and that kind of gives people a lot of ideas for tackling those kind of issues as well. So, and we offer our members connections to an online system to connect with all different groups, so they have all their details, and that means that that helps almost to develop some sort of cohesion throughout the city. And obviously with that cohesiveness, that's going to help to better tackle hate crime. So yeah, we're just trying to bring all different members and all different groups, and throughout the different supporting all sorts of different types of people. We're trying to bring them together throughout the city, so we're all kind of united in our efforts to tackle hate crime, which is basically that's what we've achieved through the diversity of the network. And we've also developed a campaign called Love Don't Hate, which is basically what the network sort of set up as our campaign to stamp out all forms of hate crime. And we've developed various merchandise, as you see, including t-shirts, things like that, to promote the issue. We've got a lot of to promote our campaign. Got a lot of digital resources, things for social media pages and email signatures, that kind of thing that we regularly promote on different social media pages and online outlets to just promote that message, A, that we want to hopefully end hate crime, and B, just to obviously love don't hate, the message that we need to celebrate diversity and be more accepting to different groups. So wherever we can, we try and incorporate that message, whether we're at events or whether we're online and things like that. And then obviously got our third-party reporting system is what we're constantly trying to develop to give that support to victims of hate crime, while hate crime is still a major issue. Okay, so one of the systems we've developed is a smartphone app called which is part of our Love Don't Hate campaign, and we're constantly developing that, and we are looking at further developing that so it's even more effective. But for now, we have an app that's that it does offer people a quick and simple method of reporting hate crime, and also they can learn about the different forms of hate crime and the law around it and that kind of thing. Basically it gives details of all the different third-party hate crime reporting centres, not just in Southampton but in Hampshire as well, so people can access those details and then be able to contact these different reporting centres, and we'll get a response within 72 hours about how a response to find out about the incident and hopefully help the person who's reported that. But yeah, it's basically provides those that information very, very quickly, and simple to download. Just need to type in Love Don't Hate into the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, or the App Store if you have an Apple device, and you'll be able to find that app and use it. And use it as soon as you can. I recommend everybody to, if you can, to download that. And use that. If you do see any incidences of hate crime, to make sure people get the support that they need. Okay, so that's it basically about our network. Just gives you a brief overview, but you may want to find out more about our network, or you may want to be part of it as well. If you want any further information, please feel free to email me at sam.waddington@spectrumcil.co.uk, or you can phone me on the landline number 02380202643, or my mobile 07511618232, and you can also use our postal address 9-19 Rose Road, Southampton, SO14 6TE. but yeah, you may want you may have any questions I'll try and answer, but you may want to. We have access to the organisations belonging to the network, all of them, which you may want to contact. So I can give you access to that, or provide information about the resources that we use to raise hate crime awareness. But yeah, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sam. And I do encourage any organisation with an interest in hate crime to sign up to the Southampton Hate Crime Network. It's extremely useful to be connected to other organisations who are working on hate crime and related issues, and to meet with them on a regular basis. And I know that Sam will be very happy to hear from you. Finally, I'm pleased to introduce Alex Boxall. Alex is a neighbourhood sergeant working with Hampshire Police, and he's going to discuss what you can expect from the police when you report a hate crime, whether that's on behalf of yourself, friend or family member, or somebody that you support.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for that introduction. As Sarah said, my name's Alex Boxall. I'm the neighbourhood sergeant on the east side of Southampton. I work with Inspector Haley O'Grady and Ahmed Sasso, who many of you will know, to help improve police response to hate crime here in Southampton. So just over 12 months ago, a new PCSO joined my team. He's Sikh, and on one of the first days he was out walking on his own, someone rode past him on a bicycle and shouted racial abuse at him. He came back to the station. He was visibly upset. So I asked him what had happened, and he told me. And then he said to me, "But I'm used to it. It's happened my whole life. It's not like it's a crime." And that just echoes what so many of you have said today, that people, even the police, even PCSOs who work for the police, aren't aware that certain things are a crime. And it's one of the things that we find in the police is that it's clear to most people that certain things are definitely a crime. An assault is a crime, threats, criminal damage, all these things are crimes, and they are sometimes reported to us, not as often as we would like, but sometimes reported to us. Other crimes seem to either not be considered a crime, or people don't know that they're a crime, so they go unreported. So education is one of the things that we as the police definitely need to do better, and with your support, hopefully that's something that we can get better at doing. I mean, for example, public order offences, verbal abuse in the street. Anyone, so if it's a non-hate crime, it's an up to 6 months in prison sentence. That's a maximum sentence. The reality is people don't tend to get that. They tend to get a fine and so on. But the reality is it's up to 6 months in prison for swearing at people in the street or in public. Throw in a racial or religious element to that, and it takes it up to 2 years in prison. Unfortunately, at the moment, the law only covers race and religion in that. I don't know why it hasn't changed. It should definitely change to include homophobic, transphobic, disability hate crime, and all the other protected characteristics. But at the moment, it's race and religion that increases that to 2 years. And we need people to know this. We need people to know that they can report these things first, because they are serious crimes. Ideally, I'd like to be in a position where we can educate both the victims, so the people who suffer this abuse, and also those who are committing the offences. So we have brought in a hate crime awareness course as a condition for often conditional portions, or as part of the outcome from the police. So if someone is abusive and it's based on any hate related element, then a hate crime awareness course can be an outcome for this. So hopefully that will help start educating people about the errors of their ways, let's say. The other thing that, there we go. The other thing we need is we need people to know that the police do take hate crime matters seriously. We do care. the media are quick to criticize the police, and many people have heard stories of police failings. And I'm not going to pretend we're perfect. We're definitely not perfect. We get things wrong. And if you feel you or people you know have ever received less than adequate service from the police, then I apologize, genuinely apologize. We do try hard and we don't always get it right. Now, when it comes to hate crime, we have put measures in place that elevate hate crime reporting and hate incident reporting, I should say, to a more important status. So just to give you an example, if you were to report a non-hate crime incident to us, so let's say, and bear in mind, this is just an example, your bicycle gets stolen. You've left it locked up somewhere, someone's come along, stolen it. There's no clear CCTV, and it goes missing. It's a £100 bicycle, it goes missing. And again, that's an arbitrary figure. It's just a relatively low value bicycle. What happens is the report gets taken, it gets sent to a unit called the triage unit, who then will look at the value of the theft, whether there's any likelihood of it being solved. And if there's little likelihood of it being solved, or it's very, very low value, then they have to take into account what resources are available, and it could well be filed on literally that day. They'll have a quick look, see if there's any clear CCTV, and then file it. If it's high value or it's a serious incident, like a serious assault or domestic incident or anything else, then obviously it gets sent to officers to attend and investigate. However, when it comes to hate incidents, what happens is the following. If you report that hate incident to us, whether it's a crime or not, it gets sent to the triage unit, who identify it as a hate crime. It's then immediately sent through to the neighborhood team to follow up and investigate. Even if it's unlikely we'll ever find the suspect, even if under any other circumstances this would be filed, every single hate incident or hate crime is sent to officers to investigate. Once the investigation is complete, in a non-hate crime situation, so what happens is the officers go, they investigate a non-hate crime. If they've, at the end of the investigation, they send it to the sergeant for filing, and then I can file it. If someone reports something that turns out to not be a crime, the officer themselves can file it. However, again, with hate incidents, even if they're not a crime, although most of the time they are, a sergeant has to review it and an inspector has to review it before it can be filed. So it gets double supervision as such. I review it and then my inspector will review it before anything can be closed and filed. So we do care about hate crimes. It is, along with domestic violence, hate crimes are the top priorities for the police. Now, how you can help us is by doing exactly what you are doing already. Such a great job already is encouraging and supporting people to report the crimes to the police, report all hate crimes. And this is important, because if people don't report crimes, whether it's out of fear or because they don't believe that we're going to do anything about them, then we don't know that these crimes are happening. And if we don't know something's happening, then we can't allocate the right resources to tackle the problem. And then it looks like we're not interested, or that we're not going to do anything. So then people continue not reporting hate crimes, and then the cycle carries on. However, if more people report hate crimes, we'll be even more aware of the problem, or rather we'll be aware of the real size of the problem, and we'll be able to work harder to help make our communities safer. Listening to everything that you guys have done today, you've all done today, has been inspiring. Hearing everything that you've shared has been not just inspiring, but also I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of notes that I'll be passing on to my team and to the other people in Southampton. You all do a fantastic job helping report crimes to us and helping people get the support they need. So please do keep it up. we are here for you and we are on your side. So thank you very much for listening. And remind people, I should say, they can report hate crime online via 101 or in an emergency on 999 or through third parties such as yourselves and the other many support services that we've heard from today. So again, thank you for everything you do. Yeah, thanks very much. And hopefully this has been helpful. If you've got any questions, do, and I will try and answer them as best I can.
On behalf of all of our speakers today, thank you very much for listening in. We hope you found this session useful. If you have any questions or comments about this presentation, you can email them to conference@adviceinsouthampton.org.uk and we'll make sure they get to the right person. Thank you for listening.